On Thursday, October 26th, EPA held a press conference talking about cleanup activities related to the derailment. They did talk about the creeks and the state of the waterways. Side note, sorry if I sound like a frog at any point during this video, I'm kind of sick. But anyway, something that was said by Mark Durno during this press conference seemed to imply that the derailment-related contamination is limited to the confluence of Leslie Run and Sulphur Run, that it doesn't extend much past this area. You can listen here.
The stream's going to get thoroughly assessed again. If there are some opportunities for cleanup, that will happen. Leslie Run's a different story. It's not nearly as contaminated other than right up around the confluence of Sulphur Run and Leslie. And it is a sensitive ecosystem, especially when you get about a mile south of the confluence of Sulphur Run.
Okay, just for the sake of time, what he's saying here essentially is that EPA, ODNR, they don't want to do too much work in here if they don't have to, because it is sensitive habitat, and in-water construction can definitely interfere with the habitat. Watch the whole thing for yourself if you want all the details. I went down into Leslie Run the morning following that press conference. I had a little time before I had to be at work. Here's a digital timestamp. I was not able to get a good one in the field. Just want to show that I was here when I said I was. And as you can see, I painstakingly mapped out, I was about over 1.6 miles downstream from that confluence. So well into that sensitive habitat, and also getting into where the creek's running behind people's homes. When I got in here, it took me probably, I walked for probably 5 minutes and started poking around. It is not as grossly contaminated as Sulphur Run, I will say, but there are absolutely still contaminants here. This is not legacy contamination. This is from Norfolk. This has all the signature characteristics of the nasty stuff we've been seeing in the creek since February. You do have to look, but you don't have to look hard. So I don't know how the people conducting these stream assessments and these surveys, I don't know how they go about looking for this stuff. I find it under large rocks. I find it up on the banks a little above the water line, the watermark. And I find it in sandbars, and it's in the sediment. All you have to do, agitate it a little, and it comes up. This is directly across the creek on the other side. Timestamps again, just to be thorough. In this case, I had flipped a pretty big rock in the creek, and you could see what came up. I think it's important to note that from my own personal observations, this stuff is not spread evenly throughout the creek. It's not homogeneous. It's there in pockets. You might not find something in one spot, and then 3 feet away, flip a rock, find a lot of it. That's been my experience. So whoever's out doing these assessments and looking for this stuff for EPA, ODNR, just because you're not finding it in one spot doesn't mean it's not here. It's obviously here. I wanted to go further, but I had to get to work. On my way out, though, I did find a good example of a biological sheen. This happens as a result of natural decomposition processes. Leaves, organic material, when they break down, they can release oils that look like this. I could see how someone might think this looks like contamination. It definitely has similar qualities. However, a quick, easy way to tell this apart, if you drag a stick through it, it's going to break apart into little polygon shapes. They're not going to reform. They don't have this slippery, slimy appearance in the same way that this other chemical contamination does. So just a quick way to tell things apart.
But again, if the contamination is to the point where some removal would be necessary, then that will be considered. But you also have to remember that we did a thorough assessment already of Leslie Run and Sulphur Run, and the levels of contaminants don't look much different than they did pre-derailment.
All right, I grew up 15 minutes outside of East Palestine, and these are not pre-derailment conditions. The footage that you're seeing now was taken about a little over a month ago. I didn't have time to get back up to this spot the day after the press conference, but if it was there 8 months later, I would imagine it's probably still there 9 months later. This, combined with what I found the day after the press conference, just in 10 minutes, combined with what a lot of other people have been seeing, it just shows that these are not pre-derailment conditions, and people have every right to still be concerned. I mean, what is this stuff? How long does it persist in the environment? If there's exchange between surface water and groundwater, which does happen, can this stuff get into the aquifer? If benthic organisms, which are a huge component of the food chain, are exposed to this stuff, if they consume this stuff, how does this move through the food chain? there are so many questions that are still unanswered, and this is still here. At the very least, let's acknowledge that these creeks are not pre-derailment conditions, and something really needs to be done, said. I don't know, I don't have the solution, but I just want to make it abundantly clear that it's still here.